Hey guys, it's Karen Marview for On the Basis of Sex. And what On the Basis of Sex is essentially about is we center on the true story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the film starts off and she basically is enrolling into Harvard Law. She is one of the only women to do so, and basically throughout the years we see various instances of discrimination towards her solely because she is a quote-unquote caretaker and is not doing what she's supposed to be doing in her position. So when she eventually becomes a professor, she starts to notice similar instances that are going on, and she's eventually presented with this case that she wants to use as a way to end some of this bias, and that's really all I'm going to say. So on the basis of sex, this was a film that I really wanted to see before the year ended. In fact, remember when Caden and I were collabing on various reviews when I was in his house? This was actually one of the ones we were planning on seeing, but unfortunately we just did not get to because there were so many films. So unfortunately I had to wait, and, I was actually really interested in this film. This is a film that looked like it was going to tell a really interesting, very timely story, but also give us a very fair account of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And to be prepared for this film, I actually watched the documentary that came out about her, RBG, just so I knew, how accurate this was going to be and things like that. And coming out of the film, is this the amazing biopic of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that you may have wanted to be? No, but it is still a very well done film. It is admittedly kind of formulaic and by the numbers, but overall, I can say that I really did enjoy it, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And I think that's one of the things that really does heighten this film. All of the acting here is really good for the most part. I really do think everyone did a really solid job, especially when it comes to Felicity Jones. I mean, the second that I saw that she was casted here, I already thought she was really good, but then when factoring in RBG, it actually helps that she does kind of look like a young RBG. So not only was it perfect casting, but she really does embody just the fierceness and the determination of someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who just constantly throughout the film is seeing all these instances of just discrimination, and this is for the normalcy of it. That is something that she finds very outrageous, and she really wants to do something about it. And I think Jones did such a great job with this role. She is very quiet, but she has the, she's very quiet, but she always has this, like I said, fierceness and just this ferocity to her that she really wants to do something about this, and I think she really did a great job. She has a really great transformation towards the end of this movie. There are several scenes with her that I could see them playing in her Oscar clip. I don't think she's necessarily Oscar worthy, but I do think she was really good here. If she got an Oscar nomination, I would not be against it because I do still think she did a very good job here overall. And then Armie Hammer as well, I thought he also did a very good job as a character of Marty. He doesn't really have as much to do as you might expect. His real, big scene comes more towards the end of the film, but overall, I still thought he did a really good job. He's, very supportive husbands towards Ruth. Every single thing that he does in this movie is basically to help her case and help her move forward and help her become a lawyer because she has all these aspirations and he really wants to help her. In their relationship, there's just something really sweet and genuine about it, and I really did enjoy these two together. I thought they worked very well here, and I was overall very impressed by him. Justin Theroux also does a really good job in this movie. His character I'll get to a little bit later, but I really did like him. Someone who really impressed me here was Cailee Spaeny. I was not expecting her to have nearly as big as a role as she did in this, but she's basically the third main character here. I mean, it's Ruth, it's Marty, and then it's Jane Ginsburg, and she has a lot to do in this movie. Some of the best scenes are actually the scenes between her and Ruth's relationship. They have a very interesting sort of relationship, and I really did enjoy that overall. I thought she definitely did a really great job, and she continues to prove herself to be a really great young actress. I mean, this, Vice, which she was in for a little bit, Bad Times at El Royale, even Pacific Rim Uprising. I mean, everything I've seen her in, I really have really enjoyed her in, and I think this is one of her strongest performances yet. Sam Waterston's really good here, Kathy Bates. The only performance that did not work here for me was Jack Reynor. He comes into the film a little bit later on, and I just thought he was a little cartoony. He was just your stereotypical lawyer, and I just did not really feel feel him in this role. Maybe it's because he didn't really have a lot of screen time, but I just did not really feel him here. I've definitely seen him better in many other films, and this one, I just was not feeling him. But everyone else I thought did a really good job. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because I'll just say it right now, Mimi Letter's directing, it's very straightforward. There really isn't anything that amazing about it. It's very formulaic, it is very by the numbers, and look, if someone had a problem with that, I can understand that, but what she does do a very good job with is she doesn't try to let her style override the film. You know, she definitely does do a good job at telling the story, she knows what kind of movie she wants, and she definitely does do a good job with it. It is one that is very well told, it is one that does get a bit heavy-handed at times, but I think it's the right type of heaviness for this film, and I thought overall her directing was really good. Nothing amazing, but I definitely was impressed by it. The writing is the thing that I definitely really liked in this film, because one of the things this film does very well is that it keeps things relatively simple. This is not a film that is a biopic about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In fact, I would say the documentary is more of a Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life up till now. That's more, you know, if you want to see a really good story about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life from then till now, watch the documentary, because that's a very good look at that. On the Basis of Sex, on the other hand, is more about the stipulations that she had to go through in becoming, you know, a leader of the Supreme Court, and what she ended up, what she had to do to fight for that, and I think it's very well told in that sense. And I like that the story really just relegates that to this one case that she's going through, because the case itself is actually very interesting. It's not a case of a woman that's being discriminated, but a man that's being discriminated, and what she ends up, the way she ends up using this case to her advantage, I actually found to be very interesting. This wasn't really something that was talked about a lot in the documentary. Like, it's something they do talk about, but it's given a lot more focus here, and I was overall very impressed by the way that was told. I think the story itself is overall very interesting, and the way the film goes about the whole gender bias thing, it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It shows you the way it was back then. It shows you in the 50s how very early on in the film, we see that women who are enrolled in Harvard Law are literally being forced to stand up and give a reason why they're supposed to be here, and some of their reasonings, you know, you can tell that there's something as simple as like, oh, I just didn't want to get married, so I did this instead, and that apparently wasn't acceptable. And it's crazy to think that we as a society at one point was this dismissive of women practicing law. I mean, nowadays it doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. It seems like something that is, you know, pretty much a natural thing, but here we really do see how that was a big deal then, and, you know, what she really did have to overcome. And I think the film does a really good job with just subtly showing these things. Again, it's not beating you over the head with them, it's just showing the sort of life that she had to go through, and that's something that I definitely was very impressed with. But also, once you factor in the main period of time the movie takes place in is the 70s, and the movie does a very good job of embodying that period of time, especially when it comes to her daughter, which, like I said, plays a much larger role in this than I was expecting, because Jane Ginsburg is someone who is able to stand up for herself. She's involved in a lot of various, like, women's marches and things like that. She is ditching school to go listen to Gloria Steinem. So this is someone who is very independent, already very self-sufficient. There's a really great scene where these men are, like, gawking and just oogling over, you know, Jones and Spaeny. And while we see Ruth as someone who is very much just like, oh, you know, don't let, you know, just let them be that way, we see that Jane actually does stand up for herself, and it's just a really good way of showing the differences between the time and how much time has really changed, and that's something that I definitely did really enjoy seeing here, and I think they definitely did a very good job with telling that story. And again, factoring Martin into the whole thing, they do a good job of telling that part of the story as well. Again, Martin Ginsburg, he doesn't have a ton to do here, but his main goal in the movie is to make sure that Ruth is able to practice law, that the whole gender bias thing, that goes away, and that's something that I definitely did love seeing. Who I wasn't as big as a fan of was Justin Theroux's character, unfortunately. I thought that he his character, you understand where he's coming from. You understand his fears. He's someone who he isn't necessarily against the case, but he's just kind of skeptical. And I think they do a good job with that. It's where he ends up going towards the end of the movie that's I just didn't really buy into. And look, this could very well be because there isn't really a lot known about Millwolf, which Theroux has touched upon before, but it just didn't seem like they really knew what to do with him, and they just kind of had him to have this role of just kind of going back and forth between, oh, this is a case that's going to work, or no, this isn't going to work, and I just didn't really love that here. Where he ends up going, especially towards the end, I really did not buy into, but Theroux still did a good job. His character overall, I just wasn't really a huge fan of, and also the villains in this movie are extremely cartoony. Sam Waterston's character, he is very by the numbers. He's very much like, oh no, women can't possibly be in law and things like that, and we can't possibly, let this be a gender bias thing. We got to take that out of the equation entirely, and it just was really over the top, and there's especially this one scene, once Jack Reynor does come on board, I didn't really buy into it, and I think they could have done a better job with fleshing that out. But overall, I did like the screenplay here. I thought it was definitely a good screenplay. There's enough scenes in there that I definitely did enjoy, and I think they did a good job, with depicting it overall. However, despite my feelings on the Theroux character, I do actually think the film does a pretty good job of bringing up just how risky this case really was. There's a lot of people who are for it, like, say, obviously Ruth and Marty, but then you have characters like Kathy Bates, who is in a bit of a gray area because she's someone who wants this case to be done, but she doesn't really know the practicalities of it all, and I think they do a really good job with just showing how Ruth was someone who wasn't afraid to take risks. She was a very forward thinker, and she wanted change to be done, and I think that's something that really to show why we should admire her as much as we do, and why she has been noted, as the notorious RBG. That's why people really do love her as much as they do, and I think this film does a really good job with showing that, and that's something that I definitely really did enjoy here. In terms of cinematography, there really isn't anything to say here. It's pretty straightforward. There's a really great shot in the beginning of the movie where you see all these men going to Harvard, and then just Ruth emerges from them. But really, other than that, there's nothing really particularly amazing about the cinematography here, but it's pretty good overall. Same with the score. It's your typical sort of emotionally manipulative score, and I guess it does a good job with that. And then we get to the editing, and that's one of my only other flaws with the film, and that is that there are a little too many time jumps here. The movie starts off in the 1950s, and it's basically taking you through Ruth's time in Harvard, and okay, it works there, but then suddenly we cut to 1956, and when we did that, I just needed a little bit more time there. I felt like the time jumps in this movie, I understood why we need them, because again, most of the movie's taking place in 1970, and once it does take place there, they do a good job with that, but I'm not gonna lie, I did think the first 20 to 30-ish minutes were a little choppy. I just didn't really, I understood why they needed to be there, but just the cross dissolves and things like that just didn't really work as well for me. I think they could have done a little bit more within that time period. And my only other, kind of small nitpick with this film are some of the mannerisms of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Again, Felicity Jones does a really good job, but there are things that are mentioned in the documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg that are not present in this film. The biggest one for me being is that they talk about how whenever she had a problem or whenever she felt stressed, she'd go to an opera, and that would alleviate her stress and things like that, and there never was a scene with that. And look, I understand that might have been hard to do, but I just was kind of waiting for them to do that, and they didn't, and I do think that was a bit of a missed opportunity. But again, it's not really a hindrance to the overall film, because at the end of the day, I was overall enjoying it. I do think it is pretty well told for the most part, and I was overall invested in what was going on. Overall, though, I still really did enjoy On the Basis of Sex. Sure, it's formulaic. Sure, it's something you've seen before. And no, it isn't necessarily the look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg that you may have wanted to see, but I do think overall they do a good job with the story. They show the importance of this case. They show how much, how passionate Ruth Bader Ginsburg was with this. All of the cast here really does do a great job, minus Jack Reynor, like I said, who I really didn't think was all that great here. There are some things they could have dived into a bit more, but overall, I can walk away saying I did enjoy it. I was pretty much into it the entire time. There wasn't really a point in the movie where I was bored. It wasn't nearly as Oscar bait as I was expecting, and it's not a film that I think is going to get a lot of Oscars, but it's one that if you are interested, I would say check it out. It's not a must-watch or anything, but it is one that I overall really did enjoy, and I do encourage you to see. And overall, I am going to give On the Basis of Sex a B. But overall, guys, my review of On the Basis of Sex. Most guys saw this movie. Overall, left your thoughts on it. Like I said, if you want a more sort of comprehensive look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, this is not for you. This is not the film that you're going to watch that for. That's much more the documentary, but I do still think this is a good biopic that isn't really getting a lot of attention, and I would say maybe check it out. And if you have seen it, let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Overall, left your thoughts, and if you've seen RBG, let me know what you guys thought of that as well. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.